Good afternoon. It is Wednesday, August 14th, and I'm here with my friend, I think almost 2 years now, Amanda Horvath. We're going to talk about, well, human design, obviously. I think we're going to dig into the G Center. But first off, Amanda, welcome. And let's start with some background, because if I do it, I will no doubt screw it up. So
Totally. It comes out differently every time because, undefined G. So my story is that I went to film school, had like 6 internships during college, figured out everything that I hate about the film industry, and ended up like at a social impact film festival. That was like a total nightmare situation. Was like, oh, if these people can run a business, why don't I go be an entrepreneur? So I decided to live near the beach in LA, become a videographer. During that time, found Amy Porterfield, who taught me online marketing and all the things. I got super nerdy about online marketing. My projector aura was just absorbing it as a 4-1 projector, and ended up starting a video marketing business, moved to Austin, climbed my way up the ladder, got all these clients that were big names that I basically realized, wow, this is not in alignment to my energy. I don't want to be doing this. Like, I knew I was a generator, or I was in a generator role in a way. So I stepped out. Well, actually, at the time, I was getting this splenic insight to step in front of the camera. And it was a very clear voice. And I ignored it for 2 years. And then I finally did step in front of the camera in 2015, launched my YouTube channel with the underlying message of how to create videos without breaking the bank or taking up tons of your time. And in that process, made it super sustainable, talking head videos. And then at some point in time, I was like, I want to die if I have to make one more talking head video. I cannot do this anymore. In that same process, I found human design. And finding human design was earth-shattering for me. I grew up in a family, you hear me say this all the time, of manifesting generators. So I was very conditioned by the manifesting generator energy. So to wake up to being a projector with 7 open centers was pretty shocking, I would say. Especially the only channel being the channel of struggle. So being a 4-1, I attempted to investigate it on my own and hit all the walls that everyone hits whenever learning human design on your own. Like the online information, it's hard to understand what's real, what's not real, where's this coming from? And eventually reached out to the same person that did my reading the first time, Barbara Ditlow, that got me really kind of hooked on the system. And she was like, oh, I teach classes. And I was like, what? Teach me everything. So went through the classes. Fast forward 4 years, here we are.
Okay, so you're 4 years into your experiment, and your first reading and mentor was Barbara Ditlow. That's pretty badass right off the start.
And I think that's why I'm so into it.
Yeah. Well, and like I found you watching the talking head videos because I was always drawn to video, not the polish of it, as I'm sure you're aware, but certainly drawn to it. And then you were into the Enneagram, and I was like, oh, that's curious. I'm into the Enneagram. And then you're into human design. I'm like, what's going on? Like, why, you were always like a couple of weeks ahead or something. Like, it was just, the videos were timely. And so eventually I think I just reached out and was like, let's connect. And then that's now 2 years ago. It was probably almost exactly around this time frame that I was in Paris on the roof of a triple-decker bus. We're getting a tour of Paris and trying to get a human design reading at the same time.
So funny.
Yeah. It was very distracting. I can actually see it in my head where I was like trying to get off the bus, trying to communicate to you that I need 10 seconds while trying to speak to someone else in French, and also just not get lost in the middle of Paris. So yeah, I remember that very clearly. And I think that was like my
I do too, actually.
4th or 5th reading. So
you're what? Your 4th or 5th?
Yeah, because I've had at least a dozen, plus all sorts of other stuff. And I was
You
saying to
know,
somebody,
I admire your approach to readings. Like it is like I was thinking about you this morning on my run. I was like, man, because I was listening to Alok, which we'll get into nerdy stuff, but I was like, I appreciate how he's describing the channel of struggle right now, which I don't usually resonate with him. And I was like, man, I wonder what his readings would be like compared to Richard's, compared to whatever. And Sean's done that. He knows.
well, and yeah, I was I was reflecting on it last week with someone. I was like, I'm really glad I did that. I didn't have a plan. It was more just like, oh, that's interesting, and I had that sacral hit, but maybe didn't have the money, but did it anyways. And so it was like, oh, it's scheduled. I'm just doing it. Um,
Mhm.
but getting other folks' uh, interpretation and filter has been valuable. Like it helps me pattern match. So a reader told me this and another reader told me that. I'm looking for the patterns, not for just their wording, because it's still coming from their lens, their perspective, their experience, their type.
That's your
So
731.
right?
100%.
I think
Yes.
that totally served me well. And I'm actually embarking on a project with two friends, Now and Jonathan. So he's a projector. She's got the lower half of the penta. So the two of us are a pretty powerful duo actually when we're together. And we're going to offer a group reading. So basically, the three of us delivering a reading. Because one of the most powerful readings I ever had was with a group whose website was down yesterday. So I don't know if she's moved on, but it was called Tan Astrology, and it was a reading. It was two women and a recording, so not in person, which I actually found really effective. And I had to wait 2 weeks for it because they would meet, they would prepare for it, and then it would deliver it like a presentation. And it was human design, gene keys, and astrology in a merged session.
That's
And
very cool.
I have watched it twice and listened to it twice on a walk, and it's like being read poetry when you're not. I'm not hearing my own voice because when I watch back my own readings, I'm like, oh, dude, shut up! Like I don't like the sound of my own voice. It's already grating, right? But then to just hear that and have them like concur with each other, like, oh, I agree with you about that, and oh, I feel differently. Like was so powerful. So we're gonna try like three-way readings because we just want to hang and talk human design anyways. So really, we're just gonna jam and discuss this thing, and this person will get a three-way, like interpretation. And
That's
I
amazing.
suspect, based on my experience of getting so many readings, that is another way to go. So we're gonna try and experiment with that. Yeah,
Yeah, because you're
I don't know. I
pulling
didn't
from
make it too much time there, but
three different minds.
I guess to say you probably need more than one reading, or at the very least, exchange readings with people, even just an energy exchange. Like, hey, can I give you a reading and you can give me one, and no money has to exchange hands?
Yeah, it is really interesting because as you say that, I'm like, I really have stuck with Barbara. Like,
Mhm.
I don't think I've done a reading with anyone else, which is
Well, and
crazy.
not like there's anything wrong with that, right?
But you're
However,
right. I mean, I've talked to a million people about it, right? I've investigated on my own through ceremonies and all
yeah.
that. But yeah, it's interesting.
Oh, cool. Well, maybe if you're open to it, we're looking for some people to do prototypes of our readings. We're doing a few off the bat. So here's your invitation. If you'd like one from the three of us, just to get.
Oh, sign me up.
All right, there we go. We got a third one. Perfect. Um, right on. Okay, back on track, Sean. Here we go. So what do you like? I know we want to talk about the G Center because yours is wide open and mine's almost packed, and and I don't know what to do with it. But I'd be curious to know what you're at and what you're doing today. I noticed that your website is scaled back and it's kind of like doing the rejig thing. Is there a master plan, or are you just feeling it out right now, or where are you at with that?
Oh, what a great question. All right. So this is actually a great entry point as well, because the main question that you're meant to ask when you have an undefined G center, which I do have in my chart, I have 25 unconscious. My unconscious moon is 25. This is pure memory. And then I have 33 as my unconscious sun. So I do have big activations unconsciously there. So it's not fully open, but it is undefined. And the question you're meant to ask when it's undefined is, am I looking for direction? Am I looking for love and direction? It is the questions like, where am I going in my business? What's my next offering? Do I know what I'm like? What kind of YouTube videos will I be creating? It's all of those questions that clutter the mind and pull you off of waiting for the invitation.
Mm-hmm.
They're all like initiating type energy. And so for the last, this specific experiment, I would say, began in July last year of like, I'm going to completely let go of that question, like completely let go and be okay with not knowing. And it's been such an interesting experiment. It has concluded now by deciding, you know what? Someone came into my life via invitation who is a generator with the 214, which is the keeper of the keys. They can put the keys in the engine, turn the engine, and they are off, right? They are here to provide direction for other people. She came into my life with this opportunity to work with her for a 30-day container and gave me direction. Really fascinating. So what they say about the people with the undefined G is that people will come into your life, give you direction. You don't hold on to them. You let them go. And I can tell you an exact 214 that told me to start my YouTube channel previously. So you don't hold on to them, but you go down that path until suddenly, okay, what's next? So I do have a vision now.
Oh,
I have
cool.
a full offer stack and
Can you share it, or is it your
Yeah,
women's?
no, I'm happy to share it. Actually, it's going to be really cool. So everything about me is alignment. Like technically when you read, you know how you can go read crosses? I'm a juxtaposition cross. So the cross of risks 4-1 is the fixed fate juxtaposition. And they always tell you, go read the left angle cross of. Like basically they don't have juxtaposition explanations like a lot of books. So I am the left angle cross of alignment. So alignment is like everything for me. So it's all based on helping people get into alignment with the frequency of self, right? Really understanding your own frequency, how you interact with other people, and how you receive energy from other people, and where you can get kicked off from hearing your own intuition, whatever your strategy is, right? So I decided at one point in time, I had an invitation to take classes at IHDS. And I came so close to doing it. So close to doing it. I basically, through them being super lawsuit happy, decided not to. I think we might have talked about this at some point, and decided,
It
okay,
comes up in lots of conversations with people lately.
yeah. With a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's very evident. As a public figure, I did not want to have that reign and on the cross attention during my Saturn return, right? So needing to be in control. Decided to self-study. So I also, with that, don't want any certifications. I'm not going to pass certifications on to other people, but I do value raw and I value traditional human design. So I bought the Living Your Design manual and I created my own Living Your Design. It's a bingeable course. I'm calling it Human Design Decoded. Then I'm going to create the Rave ABCs version of it called Human Design Expanded. And those are for people that like really want the foundations, because I think it's important. I do. I think it allows you to have deeper conversations. Then I'm going to do one that is, and obviously like none of this is launched yet, so it's interesting to share it before it is, but I really got a ton of value about analyzing the crap out of my childhood in terms of the energies of my entire family and how they impacted me. Then I texted every single ex and was like, give me your birth date.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So I have all of my exes on one page, you know? Almost all of them have the same energy as my dad and brother.
Yeah, I discovered the same pattern as well.
Yeah. And then I married someone with the same energy as my dad, right? And so it's so interesting to like see these patterns. So then of course I've analyzed the crap out of my family as well, my dynamic. So that is what the human lens will be. Deep
Cool.
diving in a small group setting into everyone's childhood ex-partners and current dynamics of their households. It'll be real fun.
Interesting. Did you look in their dream raves as well and yours, like with your weak point and theirs? Because that's very telling.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did a dream rave, and I do think who you do readings with matter, right?
Mhm.
Not that I'm cutting this person down or anything, but I didn't get a ton from it.
Mhm.
50 is like my most uh, conditioning gate, I suppose. But I don't really, you probably know it more than I do, if I had to
I
guess.
don't have to be dangerous, but I've got some good advice. Like the one thing is you look for your what they call your weak point. So what gate exists in your dream design that isn't in your daylight design?
Yeah,
And so for me, that's 42. Well, my mother has 53 three times, and so whose chest was I lying on? During birth and all that after. Well, my wife has it as well, and she's a generator when she sleeps. I'm a reflector, and so it's pretty funny. But like almost every day she'd wake up and say, "Oh, I had this dream like I was just cleaning plates and dishes in a restaurant for 8 hours." Like she just has these dreams like where it's like Candy Crush or something, but in her dreams. And I'll wake
interesting.
up in the morning and be like, "Where's the fire?" Like I just wake up and I'm agitated, and it's because of she's there. So like we full on. I've had my own bed in our garoffice for the last year, and
Garothis.
Garoffice, yeah, because it was a garage that we've converted, but it's now kind of an
Oh,
office.
that's so funny.
But our house is small, and yeah, we had to do that. But um, even that was a tough go. Like for about 8 months, like I'm going to go sleep in the other room, and then that's like I've been married 29 years, so love is attached to sleeping together and being together, right? So that was a
We were
long.
talking a lot during that time. Yeah.
Yeah, that resonant. Okay, you remember that. So, but now she's like, okay, time for you to go to your room. Like it's just like get out,
So
right?
we have the same dynamic here. I
Yeah.
slept on this couch. I went up to this couch at like 2 a.m. last night because I was like, my husband climbed in at 2 a.m. And I was like, oh, I could feel the sacral energy. It's just like so intense. So
We could go in a bunch of places here, but like this is a very interesting conversation. Never mind, like you're sleeping and each other's aura. Have you looked at the design of like do you have pets and have you looked at theirs and that dynamic? Because we are noticing a
no.
trend in our house. Okay, we have our dog Scout. We're not entirely sure of her design, but I think she's a projector.
Yeah, because it's so hard. Like, there's no way you're going to know the exact time.
We do for our puppy, and I actually I have a video. My friend Dr. Eleanor did a reading for Willow, our puppy, and it
Oh,
was amazing and kind of spot on. There's not a lot to say because there's less gates, less mental faculty issues. I mean, this dog poops, eats, and sleeps and cuddles, but some of the things she told me about this dog, I would have wanted to take the dog back had I not been informed by her. Like she said, this dog is going to want her independence. And out of a dozen puppies I've had in my lifetime, this is the only dog that initially, if you like hugged her, you get like 3 seconds, and then she would have a full body growl. And I know had Eleanor not said like this dog is gonna, you're gonna have a spiritual connection with it, you're gonna da da da, but it's gonna need its space. I would have been
fascinating.
like, what's wrong with this dog? Like this is gonna be a bad dog. And instead, I just worked through her with it, and a couple weeks later, she's totally fine. But like little insights like that were powerful. But my point with Scout is, and I think it's my wife and I both have the 731, and so when we banter, it's like two bucks, like banging heads, right? So we think
Interesting.
it's funny, but other people will be like, "Who was getting on here?" Right? Like when we have a conversation in front of them. Well, our
And wait,
dog,
what's her design?
who Wendy,
Yeah.
she's a 6'2" manifesting generator, same open centers as me. So we
Wow.
actually have quite a bit in common that way.
Wow.
But this dog, anytime we discuss anything important, like, sometimes it's just shooting the shit. How was your day? Did you empty the dishwasher? But if we're discussing stressful stuff, the dogs start fighting and playing and in front of us. Like they'll put themselves between us, and it's almost like they can sense this tension between the two of us. And they're like, ooh, throw on the comedy show. We're just going to entertain them. Like it's really the energetics of it
Interesting.
are super powerful, and it's a repeatable thing, especially the last couple of weeks. Like it's observing it real time. So, anyways, went on a whole tangent there, but Yeah, cool.
G
How
center.
G center. Yeah. So you know
Okay, so
what?
actually, I think that I have a question for you, if you're open
Yeah.
to it. So my brother has the 731. I grew up around the 731. A lot of 515 energy in my life as well, which is the one that you're lacking, but the 731 continues that energy.
Yeah.
What patterns are you currently seeing in the world that you see projected into the future?
Sorry, I was pulling up your body graph at the same time. Hopefully that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Or I mind. Can you answer that question again? Because I was
Yeah,
just.
what patterns are you seeing right now that you're projecting into the future? Are you aware of any? Like my brother just shared some the other day and I was like, "Whoa, okay, that's interesting." And I think this is a good question for.
What do you mean by pattern? If you can give me an example, I think I can respond better.
Yeah, absolutely. So he was basically breaking down. So actually, let me word it from this direction. So I mentioned I hired a 214 to give and to essentially give me direction, right? Which I think is the natural way that it happens via invitation. And in talking to my brother, yeah, exactly. I worked with this person for 30 days, felt super confident in the direction and whatnot. And then he comes in as a it's funny talking about him. He'll never see this, but as a frustrated manifesting generator, right? Talking about how the world is ending and how everything's harder than it used to be, and how the you put in twice the amount of work and get half the amount of output out in terms of income. Like a lot of businesses are struggling, the economy's down. So many people are on social media, the games are different, the marketing strategies are different, all these things. And basically like doom and gloom all the way through. And I felt it impacting my direction.
Mm.
And I was like, no, this is not going to impact my direction. Like I of course have to observe it. And it like messed me up for a whole day, because that is what the G center, the defined G does, is it impacts other people that don't have it defined and begin to shift and evolve the people with the undefined G's direction.
Hmm.
So
Are
that's
you asking me to uh, tell you what I think's going on in the future? Because I will bum you out. But
I
well,
almost am starting to wonder, because 1762 in my eyes, the one at the top, which is also the continuation of, you don't have this one, but is also the continuation of this stream, which is the logical stream, is, I think, conspiracy theories. So a part of me is starting to wonder if that 731 is primarily going to be focused on the negative, because this is what Hitler had, I think.
oh, good, perfect.
It's leadership for good or bad, right? So you're leading into the future one
Yeah.
way or another.
Well,
Anyway.
I guess I have a lot to say about that. The first one is I recognize that that is a projected channel, and I need to keep my mouth shut unless I'm asked. So, like, because I will have something to say almost always, but I am now very careful that I will say it if I know it. So, knowing with a capital K. Whereas before, I mean, I used to get into all sorts of trouble going for drinks with buddies after work. Like I apparently can be quite influential without knowing it. It might be that five in the profile.
No, this is 1,000% your G center. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Be
So
influenced.
I've
Yeah.
had people quit their jobs because I suggested they should over a couple of drinks at a bar, and they're like, "I quit my job because of you." And I'm like, "Why did you do that? I was drunk." Like,
See, this is, you provide direction to people,
well, I'm a sphinx too, right? So there's like
right?
that's I'm here. That I mean, that's what I do. By the way, have you ever just on the sphinx thing, Nathan? Do you know? Like, you ever notice that the Sphinx actually is the seven, the one, the 13, the two, and he described it as like the cat, like laying over top of the G center. So these are the paws, this is the head, and here's the tail. And
Hmm.
as soon as he said that, I was like, "Whoa, yeah, there's something to that." And then actually, in talking to Eleanor about the sacred geometry of the body graph, which is a whole separate conversation. Like, she's funny, but she's like all these body graphs on the internet that people are modifying and they're putting like cute little hearts and stuff. And she's like, it's an abomination. Like, it's sacred geometry. Like, what are you doing? But, that G center is turned what's that, 45 degrees on purpose, right? Like it actually has geometry to it. It's not just like, oh, isn't that convenient? We can make the lines connect. Like it actually is part of this, right? So this sort of sphinx laying over top of it, it sits with me a
Oh,
lot.
that's so real. Okay, I see it now. Yeah.
Right? So I know that 731, I got to watch it because I get into trouble really quick, and the fact that it's conscious, I am aware of it. I think if that was unconscious, I probably someone would have already killed me by now, or something would have happened because if I was wielding it irresponsibly in the past. So
That's fascinating.
yeah, I have lots to say, but I do it now when I know it with a capital K, and otherwise I don't even. I've become very quiet in group gatherings. I also now recognize that I can change the mood of a dozen people just when I arrive. Like I've been playing with it. So when I go play a softball game, if I show up grumpy, everybody's grumpy. If I show up and I'm like in a good mood but not sharing unless invited, the whole vibe's different. And
Wow.
I know that kind of could sound like arrogant, but it's really, I recognize it's just an energetic. Like it's my vehicle, my body, and if I'm tuned and I'm vibing my outer authority and I'm following my prescription correctly, um,
Well, you
I
have a
feel good.
deeply enveloping aura with, like, and it's the 3420, right? As well as the most powerful manifesting generator, only manifesting generator channel, but it's like it pulls in I feel like a generator in general, aside from this powerful chart with all those leadership channels defined as well, your 731, the 18, the 1333, right? It's like when a generator is frustrated, it's so enveloping.
Mhm.
Oh my God, so enveloping. I've become aware of it and it's like unstoppable. So with this chart, I could see that being the case.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even reflecting on an interaction I had earlier today that we were talking about, and I feel like I responded to this person in the same way I was talked to, but I now recognize that my voice has a certain strength to it. That even a voice memo in response is just interpreted as 300% more. It has a weight to it that I don't think I always appreciate, and so or recognize. Well, I mean, I'm starting to for sure, but with evidence that compounds. Yeah.
Fascinating.
So the future. Uh, I'm really trying to focus on optimistic scenarios, and I'm actually really excited about stuff. I personally have had a shit show the last 7 years, and I'm kind of feel like I'm coming out of that cycle now. If we're going to talk in 7 year cycles, that's what's keeping me afloat. Um, but yeah, it's also my interpretation of human design has changed quite a bit in the last 4 or 5 months. I'm moving away from the words, conditioning. I'm replacing that word with being influenced or can be influenced. And, I recognize that I'm all of the body graph. It's not my definition. It's where I'm more amplified, more prominently defined, right? We all have all of it. It's just where, I don't even like the word fixed anymore because fixed sounds like an excuse. Like,
It's
it's just
reliable.
okay, you know?
You have consistent, reliable energy in those areas. That's how I describe it.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
used properly, right? Because it can also, I think, with my design, I've caused more trouble for myself by not recognizing how I can be perceived or interpreted. So I'm getting
Which
better
is
at
where
that.
you're influenced, the white areas, because the white's going to pull you away from the color.
Yeah.
You try to
And
be someone else.
lots of weight in that head, najna, like literally nothing to grab onto. Thus,
Yeah.
meditation and everything else I've done, and then completely open heart too. Which that worthiness thing, man, holy cow, it's
It's
still
crazy.
an ongoing battle. But thank goodness for this, right? Otherwise, I'd be still crashing and having car accidents in
Or
life.
which one?
Well, just this. Well, just the fact that I'm
All
aware.
of what you are. See, that's the thing is when you live When you live in the white, you are living in a place of lack, in a way, is how I feel about it. It's like I'm trying to be someone I'm not, and it's creating anxiety in my body, right? It's like I'm trying to prove myself because I feel I have something to prove. Okay. You have nothing to prove, right? And then it helps you return to the colored parts and own who you are. That feels so good.
In fact, I was mentioning earlier that you've created a, it's the body graph and handwriting on it about like the not self of each open center. And I said earlier, I'll say it right again here. I've got like 6 people's versions as my favorites on my phone. Yours is my favorite. And what I do before I meditate is actually what I did first was I used to, before I meditate, I would go, am I trying to, thinking about things that don't matter? Am I trying to solve other people's problems? Am I trying to be certain? Am I trying to prove myself? Am I, trying to avoid conflict? Am I trying to get things done that don't need to get done? And by
Yay! That's so
right,
exciting.
and by
I do
doing
the same
that,
thing.
I could drift into meditation.
Yeah.
Lately, though, I do them all because I'm like, am I, trying to be? I forget the throat's like, am I trying to be
Trying to
noticed?
attract attention.
Trying to attract attention. And sometimes I feel like, holy shit, yeah, I am. Okay, well, just stop that. So let's, back it off and relax. Um, I think for me, I had to. I was out of control. I mean, this up here is like a endless goldfish bowl of entertainment. And I've even in the last week realized how many things I would get excited about and into, and they weren't mine. Um, Actually, I have to give you an example right now because it came up this morning. There is a drummer named Todd Sucherman. He's the drummer for Styx. Incredible drummer. I actually met him at the airport happenstance last year. Anyways, he's filling in for Seth Meyers' drummer on that Late Show this week. And so super cool. Like I guess they're not going to have a band anymore, so it's like a final hurrah. I'm not sure what's happening there, but he's been posting on his Facebook his experience. So here's a picture of the drum set I'm sitting in tonight. And old me, even 2 weeks ago, would have been jealous of that. I would have been jealous that he's having that experience and I'm not now. And so I actually realized, like, holy shit, I have this jealous streak. I don't like that. And so I did some self hypnosis and worked through it. And I'm like, it's way different now. But so today I actually posted like a reply to his post on Facebook, and I don't know the guy; he doesn't know me. I was just commenting. I just said, "Thank you for posting that. I'm getting to live vicariously through him." So instead of being jealous of this cool opportunity he has, I'm instead going like, "Oh, cool! It's like I'm sitting there and I'm experiencing it." That's not what I get to do. I would love to, as a drummer, that would be a killer gig. I would love to be there, but in my mind, in the past, I was always striving to somehow get there. And it was based in, I think, jealousy and too many options. And none of them were like for me. So that's been like a really recent self rediscovery. So
That's beautiful.
mhm.
I can tell. I mean, I think you're such an example of how to approach human design as a manifesting generator, to be honest, because you move so fast that you don't like, we've talked many times throughout the years, I guess, and like you don't necessarily deep dive into the gates and the channels, or you didn't initially, right? It didn't click right away, especially the open headed ajna. But
Mhm.
like everything that you're describing, I can tell you're at like a very different part of the experiment. It's really cool. And that's a perfect example of how human design unlocks things in your life. And it's really hard to explain that to someone.
Mm. Well, and you feel it at a, like, I think Leanne Wolf said it to me first, was like, you feel it at a cellular level. Like it's in you. It's not just like, oh, that's in my mind and I get it. It's like it's got hold.
Yes.
There's also have you read the document 7 Years on the Wheel or whatever? And it's about the deconditioning process.
No.
Fascinating document. I have not read it. I've just skimmed it.
I struggle to read documents in human design. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm like, give me all the raw audio. I think because I'm acoustic, I guess, as
Yeah.
an individual, but yeah.
Well, so Jonah Dempsey was breaking some of it down for me, and that was all I needed at the time. But I've got the document somewhere. Remind me, and I'll shoot it your way. But it basically kind of talks about how you go through the wheel itself as part of your 7 year. So, there's the wheel that you do in a year, but effectively you're kind of going through the wheel over 7 years as well. I think it starts in a
Mm.
different gate as far as the deconditioning process versus, January 21st being the rave New Year. So there's sort of like I think it was like a separate starting. I could have that wrong, but
I
um,
wonder what planet goes around in 7 years that is relating to, if at all.
uh, that's an interesting question. It's certainly not Pluto. Uh, that's a whole thing. There's so many things on timing of stuff. Joan and I were talking last week, and we had, both kind of had an epiphany at the same time. Like the he said something about 7 minutes or something. There's something that happens with humans every roughly 8 minutes, and we realized that it takes 7 minutes or for like neutrino, like for what you see of the sun. Like if you look at the sky and you see the sun, it took 7 minutes for that image to reach your eyes, right? Like that's something to contemplate all by itself,
Totally. It's wild.
right? Like we could be dead in 6 minutes because the sun exploded a minute ago, right? Like it's like we won't know for another 6 minutes. So put that in your pipe and smoke it for a while. That's a whole separate mind meld. Um, but the timing of these things is fascinating, and I started writing a blog post this morning, and who am I kidding? I was having a conversation with ChatGPT asking it to write a blog post for me, and then
Oh my gosh, I do the same thing. I love talking to ChatGPT. Like actually talking, game changer.
yeah, like where you just riff back and forth. Oh,
Crazy.
unbelievable! And well, we should talk about that next too. But the thought I had this morning is like some folks are tracking asteroids, right? Like asteroids could have an influence, and do we count Pluto? Is it a planet? But what about Starlink? I mean, there's now 12,000 satellites that our neutrinos are bouncing off as they come down here, and they contain
That is
packets of
interesting.
information of which knowledge and data is all energy. So we're actually potentially having neutrinos bounce off a particular Starlink thing that, like, 5 years from now, will there be with
But
that?
also, I don't think neutrinos bounce off things. They move through it.
Sure, sorry, but they're moving through those as well.
It would still be changed by that object
Yeah,
regardless. Yeah.
and then you start being in the energy space. Like, are people sending these up there with the right energy, or are they just cleaned for space? Like there's so many things to think about when you start going down the energy path that it's pretty trippy. So
Okay, that's your 731, right? Like, looking at the future.
yeah.
Before human design, I would describe myself as someone that lives in the future. Now, like finding out I was an individual who is here to live in the present, and we are all here to live in the present moment, right? But there is the magic for me specifically will unfold in the present moment, and having a like deep resistance to doing that in a way. And I remember at one point Barbara asking me, she's like, if you don't live in the present, where are you living? I was like, I guess you're right, but mentally you're in the future. And I really have let go of a lot of that.
Yeah, same. And around this time frame, like I think we've been in the experiment. It sounds like you've been about 6 months more than I have, but like similar window of years,
Yeah,
right?
I was May 2020.
Yeah, I was like February and March 2021. So,
Yeah, there you
but
go.
like, you know what I mean? Like you're sort of at a certain point in that deconditioning journey where we're, I think, in a similar wavelength. But
Yeah.
then the other thing, and I've had this conversation a few times, is like, do I experience the 7 year cycle as a manifesting generator, as in skipping steps and then rolling back, but you're more following the process? Like, does that apply?
More like spinning in circles, lost in the experiment is the projector deconditioning journey. I feel like to be, if I'm being completely honest, especially with the undefined G center, right? It's like, it's so interesting to return to who you were like, I do use the original language of like who you were born to be or whatever, that concept. It is like a coming home to self that it's so radically different. I can't describe to you how different it is, but it's chaos in that process. You know what I mean? Like it's like I saw a reel the other day and I sent it to one of my friends and It was like projectors, everything that you were taught to have success, you need to do the opposite of that. And I said it to my friend, like, yeah, this is tons of help, sarcastic, but it's like, she's like, it is very true though. It's like, yeah, it's
Hmm.
weird. Like
It's kind
even
of
this,
it's
yeah,
kind
go
of
ahead.
comforting to hear you talk about like chaos in your world, because I view projectors as not having the chaos that I but
No,
I
no,
guess
no. We live in the deep constantly.
mm,
Especially, I'm a Scorpio. I've now gone deep into not deep, but like I've investigated astrology a little bit more. So like my astrology, my sun is conjunct to Mars, and both of them are in Scorpio. And so Mars and Scorpio already just like drives, like same with like the Scorpio energy of going deep. So add I don't know how much of it almost comes from that versus being a projector, but like the deep dive it's just, you get lost in it. You look at every angle and you're looking at the big picture, and you're not here to know yourself at all. You're here to know the other. And that's like really challenging. And then add being an undefined G on top of that, it's like, you know?
sorry, I'm just gonna change the view here too and see if that's better. Oh, that's better. That's
Cool.
better. Sorry. Um, yeah. Well, so about that open G, you've got two gates coming out. We both share the one in our design. I recently now I'll tell you what resonates for me with it, and then I'd be curious to hear what yours is, because yours is in your Pluto as well. So I have the one in I think it's my. I'll just check. It's either Earth or it's full on my
Oh yeah.
sun. So this mohawk, like I didn't have this always. I've run into a couple of readers, like Richard Beaumont. When he saw me, he was like, "Ah, of course." Like he just sort of saw it and was like, "Ah, of course." And I didn't know what that meant at the time. Now I do. I've come to the conclusion that this haircut found me. Like my body wanted to express itself in a unique way, and once I
Mm,
did it, it was like a switch got turned. Like I was conservative, nice IT guy, but just beige. And something happened when during a COVID haircut that just over 6 months evolved from hiding it and, in meetings with a hat, but at home I had this little black mohawk to now it's like purple or red or pink or like whatever. And by the way, it's the easiest haircut in the world to maintain. And this is like Velcro, so my hats stay on. It's awesome. Like it's the best haircut. But I realized my body needed it. It wanted it, right? It wasn't
yeah.
getting to express itself. And as soon as the vehicle was able to, there was like a calmness that came with that. And it's just something that just seems to be, I don't think I'll always have it. Not that there'll always be things that change, but for now, that design vehicle body need is satiated. Like it's good enough for now. I
Yeah.
get to change the color, whatever, but it's a simple solution that allowed me to move on to other parts of the design that I wanted to explore.
I
So
feel like that's also your 5710 perfected form. Barbara explains it as peacocking. This channel likes to peacock.
well, I've used the word peacock before, so
But
that's fine. I've
the
never
great, I
thought
can see it both ways,
of
like being afraid to be a freak as the 1/8. The 5710 is also individual, right? So both of
that.
them kind of have that mutative individual quality, and both are fueling the identity center.
That's interesting. That makes sense now. I hadn't the 10 coming out of the G. That makes sense. The word peacocking is how I've described the mohawk. Like, and quite literally, it's like. So for you, like you've got the 1/5 in Pluto.
Yeah.
How do you? I mean, I guess you're not peacocking necessarily, but how do you express yourself? How does your vehicle express
So
itself?
this is also great timing for this question, because the 8 has been in transit for quite some time now.
Hmm.
Um, I have been experiencing very long transits of my throat recently, um, starting with 4323 for a solid, I don't even know how many months, like 6 months or something. And then it went away, or no, it went directly to the 8, right? So the 8, if I look at the transit, it's in
For some reason, I'm
Uranus,
trying to the
Uranus
transit.
right now. So it's like, basically it's a long activation that anyone that has the one is being activated with this 1/8 energy. And man, it's depressing. It is so, and I'm like, I looked at my brother's chart and he totally has the one. And I'm like, this is also coming from that. I heard Ra describe the 1/8 as when this person talks, depression just spreads in the room. Now, I will get to the positive sides of this, but I think it is really interesting. I have a friend that's a projector with the 1/8, and I deeply value his creativity and watching him create in his own mutative fashion and feeling so much angst over it, but he can't do it any other way. And he's just got to do it his way. You know what I mean? But it's, the way he talks about it is in that energy. Very,
Hmm.
and I'm trying to create and it's not working.
I have that 1/8, and you know what I was talking about? Like, I can change the mood of a ball team. I think you're onto something there. Like, if I show up depressed, it's literally I I thought the room someone else was doing it, but no, I think it's me sometimes. So,
Yeah, it's interesting because it's also leadership through being the creative alpha, through really through expressing yourself, right?
mhm.
That's what's happening. You're expressing your identity. And it's so vulnerable because it's vulnerable to express yourself, especially from the projected fashion, right? Of like, are you invited to express that? Or are you doing this and no one cares to hear it, right? And so they're used to not being understood, being individual. It's like very on the forefront of society. So when I look at it from my experience, I find that this 1/8 transit, the 4323 coming in transit silenced me. I went dark on YouTube.
Hmm.
It's so interesting. It
Yeah, that's
activated my
not what I would think of
33
for that
hard.
channel, but that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it is interesting. I wouldn't think that either, but for some reason it was interesting. And the 1/8, there is an element I would say that because it comes with direction. So I recorded videos with the 4323. I just didn't necessarily post them because the like timing wasn't right or something like that. It was like very timing focused and
Mhm.
more mental and processing, externally processing the breakthrough. The 1/8 is direction. And so I think it's interesting that, I went through this container with someone with the 214 during the 1/8 transit, because it is solidifying like a mutative direction that is in alignment with my energy being a 2838 channel of struggle individual, like 100% individual. So I deeply resonate with the one. The one was one of those that when I looked at the chart the first time and analyzed all my gates, I was like, this makes sense. Self expression. If you're not expressing yourself, you feel like you're dying. Yep.
There's something about that Pluto energy too, right? Like I'm 46 in both my Plutos, and that has been that's kind of like a lifelong lesson. And maybe it is because it's just this slow moving energy, but for me, it's all about gratitude and showing it. Like I have actually realized with that if I have to show gratitude, like thank you for emptying the dishwasher, even though I've done it the last 10 times. Like you don't say the second part, but if I thank someone for doing something menial, then they're gushing back. Like all of a sudden,
And
there's
that's
thanks
the
for something else I
46
did.
you're saying?
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
weird, dude.
Huh.
Like I to the point where I feel like I'm pandering. Like I don't want to be like, oh, thank you for doing this thing, but it's the only way I will even recognize that I exist or thank me for anything that I've done. Like it's this weird, and maybe it's that five projection and what you're
Interesting.
saying about the 8-1, can come in and depress everyone. And then I got the 731 where it's like, but shut up and wait until someone asks. And so it's like this, I feel like a conflicted leader because of those things. Like which comes first? What do you do in those situations? So this is
Probably
kind of
whichever one is invited,
mhm.
but you can't really help one way or another because you're going to have to talk.
Yeah.
That
But
3420.
that's another thing. This week has been extreme for epiphanies and level. Like it's been a crazy week across the board for me. But one of them has been I need to vent, Like I don't actually have anyone to listen to me ever, it seems.
Oh
And
my
this
gosh. This
doing
is
it.
like fueling my soul right now. Keep talking.
Yeah. Well, no, I just like I've got the 13, right? And it's in my personality sun. So basically, everybody trauma dumps on me all day, strangers alike. I mean, I have some crazy stories. One, I'll just tell you this one because this comes a few times. But my wife and I were in where were we? We were in Cancun, flying back from Cancun. Terrible trip. Caught a cold. It was just sick. It was terrible. Anyways, at the airport, decide to take the ferry back from Vancouver to Victoria. So this is a 6 a.m. ferry, super early. I'm exhausted. So I get on the ferry and I just sit in a seat and I'm just going to sleep. My wife is next to me and this woman comes up and just starts trauma dumping on her. Like, never met her before. And it was dark. Like, she was talking about being gang raped and like, it was just like, it was intense. It wasn't like I had a bad day. It was like this
Wow.
and this and this. And I don't think the woman even knew my wife's name. Like, it wasn't, and but I was kind of like half there, so I was so tired I wasn't listening, but I could hear a couple times she said, "Is your husband awake? Is he listening?" She asked like 3 times, and I swear my aura was pulling this stuff out of her, but my poor
Interesting.
wife received all the energy and literally was sick for the next 3 days because it was just attached to her, right? It just
Oh,
like barnacles on a ship, and it's like, man, that was that happens way too often. So back to what you're saying, like I hear everybody's stuff. I don't generally. I've always been. Maybe I've always recognized that I can change the mood, like that sort of depression. So I keep quiet. But if I don't get to vent, or at least get it out, I suffer physically. UTIs, whatever. Richard Bowman gave me some great advice that I had to remember this week, which is with that 3420, I got to get that energy out. So he taught me to like put my elbow on a granite countertop and just slam it down once or twice, and I just view it as launching that energy out of my body, like it physically has to go, and
you
that's actually
you
worked.
told me that a while ago. You said I would take my hand and I would bang it on the table. And I have my son is a 3420. And
Mm,
so we have this thing when he gets super frustrated, we go over to a counter and go bang, bang, bang.
nice. It
Per
works.
your suggestion.
Yeah,
And
and
it
well,
works. It like makes him laugh. Like it's like a release.
yeah, because it's just stuck in you, like it's stuck
Yeah.
energy. It's not mine. Often it's not mine. I actually, my friend Dr. Eleanor suggested I grab buy like a wiffle bat. Like you just need to go pound a wiffle, and like people do that for therapy. I think some people are designed to need that in therapy, whereas others would be like, I did that, it did nothing. Well, that's not your trip, man, but it is mine. So
Yep.
yeah, it's powerful stuff.
Okay, let
Okay,
me ask you a question.
yeah.
Are we wrapping? You're
Oh
good
no,
to
no, no. I want to ask about quad right and stuff
Oh
as well.
yeah, we can totally go there next. But I'm curious
Mm,
because I've been thinking about this in my own life. I, just hired that coach for 30 days and I was able to process every single day and it was a game changer because I do not have enough processing time either. And I think a lot of people feel that. What do you think would happen if you had like 30 days to unapologetically process whatever you want to process?
uh, I would melt into goo and be enlightened because that's what I've been doing for 3 years on my own. And like, that's what I do with my somatic work with cannabis and my metaphysical book and digging out every part of trauma. I'm convinced my light body is able to receive more data, more everything because of the work I do. But I've never sat down and done it for 30 days, which would be amazing. Instead, I do like 3, 4 hours a night, 4, 5 nights a week. Like I'm always processing stuff and I'm always exploring new things. I'm going to do a past life regression next week, but I've been in something called the Egg, which was an amazing sacred geometry meditation chamber that blew my mind. I've been fascinated with obviously tuning forks and Wilhelm Reich's work with orgone and the orgone box, and all about like finding that peace, and then hypnosis. And I now do transcendental type meditation every day, sometimes 3 times a day. Like my world right now is highly stressed and financial. Old me trying to do the right thing created a huge mess for current me, and I've got another 6 months to a year to work out of it. Left me. I'm
Solar
so
plexus.
stressed right now. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yep. And well, that open heart. I was
Yeah,
literally
but, yeah.
made people reliant on me. Here's an example. Another sort of epiphany. I'm very good at tech. 30 years in tech. I know stuff that other people don't know. In fact, I know some of the stupidest things about tech. I can send emails from a command line, right? I still can do that. So, um, but
Wow, that's pretty
like from a
impressive.
telnet session, super useful. Um, why am I telling you that? Super
Ted.
techie. Oh, I literally made my whole family reliant on me for tech. Like, get this iPhone because I'll be able to support you. Well, I did it because I thought I was being helpful. I wanted everyone to love me but really what I did is made them rely on me so they stopped thinking for themselves. And I had to eventually like break that mother wound with my mom, even of just like, Mom, it's 11 o'clock at night. You just called me to tell me that your contacts aren't syncing. I used to like drop everything. Never mind the fact that when your mom calls you at 11 o'clock at night, I'm thinking something happened to someone in the family,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
So it's just already not, and I'm still trying to fix that. And she's a manifester, so she just kind of like, I'm calling, right? Like,
Oh,
but
your mom manifestor.
yeah,
Fascinating. Okay.
yeah, with the 53, and I got the 42, so it's sort of
Oh,
like
right. Yeah.
starting stuff, and someone's trying to correct it, right? So or finish it. Uh, but yeah, I eventually just had to be like, type your question into YouTube and watch the video because that's what I'm going to do. I no longer can keep track of every single possible thing. When Windows 95 was out 15, 20 years ago, I used to be able to tune that for anybody. The tech changes too fast. I was literally running myself into the ground, making everyone's techie lives easier, all because I was seeking approval and you know it was like a tractor beam. I didn't even, man, I was totally unaware, totally. And it's become so clear now, and it's really hard to put boundaries in place with people you love after 52 years of
Totally.
right.
Yeah.
It's
That's
really
why, that's actually why it was interesting. I was on a call with Richard the other day, Richard Beaumont, and he
oh,
said, when you get into human design, you often lose friends.
mm,
And I was like, I had never heard that before. But I'm like, immediately my body was like, makes sense. Like, because there's something, and then I mentioned that to someone at the projector meetup, and they're like, yeah, but that's like every spirituality thing. And yes, there is an element of that, but it is challenging for someone to accept the changed, more, like version of however you're going to show up. Because if they're used to you bending and, avoiding your confrontation to be able to basically please them, that's not a pleasant shift.
mm.
Yeah.
And I had to do it in phases. Like I remember talking about it a year ago. Where it's like I learned to say no by saying no, but or yes, if, and I had to do that for 4 months. It was like a graduation period. So I just said no,
Wow.
I'm not doing that. But I learned language like can you help me with this? No, but I can help you on Saturday, and it gave me an out. It also meant that they weren't getting the immediate need filled and would probably do it themselves. Or yes, I'll help you if that I had to that was my strategy for probably 6 months to a year was I had to use that. Now it's just no. Like it was really hard. And my friend base and everything is way smaller. I have a whole new tribe. It's mostly human design people. Uh, of course.
I get
But,
it.
right?
It's so funny.
But it's important.
And it's
Richard
it's
said to
it's
me, like,
funny because it's so
I
far.
said, oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead. Go
I was
ahead.
going to say, like, just to wrap on the Richard thing, because he did say to me, like, I had a reading, it was 4.5 hours, it was awesome. He's sitting there drinking red wine and telling stories and doing impressions, and it was amazing. But he said, like, there's people in your life, like even your family, that are not here to help you. Like they're maybe here to give you a lesson, but they're also just not even for you. And I
Mm,
keep waiting for which family shoe to drop. So far, the family's all there, but nobody really likes me. So, or at least the way I felt like they used to like me. So I think they respect me. So that's important, but they don't like
Okay,
me.
you totally picked that up out of my head. I totally was gonna say, do they respect you? Uh, I've I've been reading a lot of like relationship books, and it talks about how respect is more important for a man than being liked or being loved. Um, so
I
maybe
agree with that now. I don't think I would have even comprehended that before, you know. And like even today, this other interaction I had today, I realized, and it was a phrase. It's my one of my new policies, and I don't have many policies because I've realized with the open head knowledge I shouldn't fix any, and I had lots of personal policies, but this one I kind of stand by, which is I am
give an
nice.
example. Oh yeah, you're going to. Okay.
I'm nice to people that treat me with respect, and you know, if you're not going to treat me with respect, the niceness comes off because I was just nice to everyone all the time, and that meant not respecting myself. So it was a very simple, general guideline, and it's starting to serve me. Um, whether that'll change again, probably, but that's like my one of my very few policies at this point is,
That's good.
you know, give you a chance to treat me with respect. And respect doesn't mean kowtowing to my needs or anything. It's just at least recognize that we got to meet each other roughly halfway. And if it's not, I don't, my battery energy, it does not have time for that anymore.
Yeah,
So,
I could see that. 1000%.
okay, let's talk quad left and quad right. So I'm a quad left, I'm the shark. You're the quad right, the Alf. I heard, and I wonder if you've heard this. I Someone told me, or I heard Ross say it, but like a quad right experiences like your life is like me on LSD.
Oh yeah, you
Like,
told me this.
did I say that? No, I don't even really know what that means, but I've been on LSD enough times to know that it's a whole different trip. And so I've said that to you. Have
How
you
would
said
you describe it? What would be the words that you would describe your experience of an LSD trip?
well, I've had several. Um, everything's brighter. Everything's That's a good question, actually, because I don't I don't really know what I mean by that, other than on LSD, it's visual for me. I don't have visuals almost any other time. In fact, on mushrooms, almost everything is inside my head, except for one mushroom trip where literally the room was the Simpsons, it was a Simpsons couch, and it was a guitar. It wasn't a guitar; it was made of Lego, but it
Oh my
was
god.
so detailed. It wasn't like, oh, it kind of looks like Lego. It was like I could see the Lego bits, and it
How
was
much did you have to take to get to that level of
well,
your
we did a hippie flip. So we
Oh,
MDMA
okay.
into
Okay.
5 grams of mushrooms. So, and with a group of friends, it was a cool night. It was awesome. It was awesome. But that's the only time I've had visuals, like where I opened my eyes and had visuals. It was always some
Oh.
sort of like vision in my head. I don't really have visuals, but on LSD, visual, like, you
Hmm.
know, like extreme visions at times, and where I see the world completely differently. Like people are different. I definitely can see. I've had a lot of experience. In some cases, I can see disease in people. Like literally, all of a sudden, veins and things that weren't there before are there, and I'm not imagining it. I'm just perceiving it with more clarity. That kind of thing.
Totally. Love that.
Um, yeah. Um, but also, like, well, I'll just tell you this one other experience. It was a men's retreat. It was the first time on LSD, I think. So it was we did MDMA the day before. It was like 15 men, all like spooning each
Wow,
other.
follow up of the day after. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
That's
And then the
pretty
next day
intense.
was like a big dose, 2 tabs of LSD, I think. And so it was a
Man,
lot
were
of
you not just
intense.
wrecked? If you were a projector or a manifester or a reflector, you just been out for like 3 weeks after that one. Were you just
It
done
kicked
after
my
that? Or
ass. No,
yeah.
it was like 6 weeks of like, what did I just do? I knew it was important, but I didn't know how to integrate it.
Yeah.
But at the time, like the things I saw, but I just remember my buddy Walker was there, and he had done it before. He had been to one of these things before. It was my first time there. And he said, no matter what you do, don't look in the mirror if you go in the bathroom. So, and of course, I went to the bathroom. I was like, oh, cool, look in the mirror. And but the thing
I
is,
almost said this earlier. You're stealing things out of here. I love it. Keep going.
I looked in the mirror and I saw nothing. I just saw me. But what I saw instead, like, but I remember that clearly because I went to the bathroom and to go to the bathroom, and every time I blinked, the bathroom changed, but only between two scenes. So the bathroom was either crystal clean, like brand new hospital, had been bleached, everything was white and bright, and then when I blinked, it was like out of the movie Saw, like
Hmm.
just the nastiest bat, like to the point where you didn't even want to stand in there, much
Ooh,
less
that's scary. That's
right.
scary.
And it was just blink, bright, clean, blink. Oh, it was
It's like
really.
Strange Things or Stranger. What is it? Stranger Things. Yeah, I think.
I've never seen it, but it sounds like what I've heard it described.
There's
Yes.
like a top world and a bottom world, and people get stuck between the two. Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Does that
yeah,
correlate with God, right?
that's interesting. So it's interesting. Barbara is a quad left, and so we've had many conversations about the quad left, quad right difference. And I texted her the other day and was like, "What do you think an embodied Amanda quad right would look like?" You know what? I should actually find this. It won't take very long, but this was magic. I was like, Barbara, it made me consider just doing like maybe I should have conversations with Barbara as a theme on my channel, just telling the wisdom. She
Oh,
said,
for sure.
You will never know what a full embodied quad right projector will look like because you are so unique. That is part of the mystery. That applies to anything, right? Anything in the chart. You simply need to let it unfold and see where it leads you. Now, the mind is designed to keep things in order and be in control. Part of that is visualizing what a quad projector would look like.
Hmm. What do you mean by embodied? Even like I'm wondering about that word. Like you're a quad right, so if you're embodied or you're not, what do you mean by embodied?
Oh man, everything about human design for me is about embodied.
Do you mean by
So
like being in alignment, like the
feeling it in your body, like what's the somatic experience of your chart, like of your interactions with other people? That's where my mind goes, like often with human design. So when I mean embodied, like you've learned the lesson, you've taken on that wisdom. You're really because the way that the conversation began was like, I don't even know how to be quad right because there's a transference that happens. She describes it as a piece of paper. And if you fold a piece of paper in half, the two, like if you were to fold them like this, and like if the paper's like this, you're going to fold two corners together like that. There's a transference that occurs where they just leap to the other side. So quad rights actually operate like quad lefts, and quad lefts operate like quad rights.
oh,
So quad left is supposed to be hyper strategic, everything laid out, structured, like all the things. That's how I operate. I am highly strategic. So when
mhm.
it's like your mind is not strategic, what in the world does Amanda look like without a strategic mind? You know?
Hmm. So you believe you behave the opposite, or that's how you perceive things is as the opposite, or when you're in alignment, you're not the opposite.
I it's all an experiment. I think that here's what she said. I think she said, you will experience greater acceptance of the unfolding process by process, even under the demands of making money. I find the most strategic and organized people are quad right, and often the lefts are not strategic at all. The phenomenon called transference is inescapable. Gradually, you notice how to move more in the direction of letting things come to you, and the strategy just appears. I think what you're speaking about is developing the skills and talents necessary to be successful. That requires a certain strategy and repetition. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, this concept, I am highly strategic, and so I think as we decondition, we'll begin moving more and more that direction. And I will tell you, as a quad right, when they say your mind is like a sponge, 1000% true. The
Mhm.
amount of information that I'm consistently taking in, even at a young age, I could tell you where we were driving down the road when you said X, Y, and Z, like what was out the window kind of thing. Um,
But you can't retrieve it unless someone asks, right? Is that kind of what it is? Like it's not accessible to you in a way.
So imagine being an undefined G, not knowing who you are, with no, or like, unsure which direction to go, trying to let go of this question, and then having no ability to pull it out of yourself.
Hmm.
Someone said that if you were to put a quad left or a quad right, like in the slums in India, let's say, the quad left is more likely to escape, like to get out of that situation, like to kind of go up, while the quad right is so lost in the depth of what's going on and the overwhelm that it's like it's hard to make up from down. There's just such a deep thing. And so I'm learning, put yourself in front of more people, Amanda, like, you know, and have them pull it out of you, because if you try to pull it out of yourself, you're just going to be spinning your wheels. And so I think that's kind of moving more towards the quad right side of it.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean that tracks for me. I've been like I understand the quad left's highly strategic. I am I can like people will comment all the time like how did you know where we're going to be in 2 years in the first 10 minutes of our conversation, right? Like I can forecast, I can paint the picture, I can tell you every path, and I can map out the plan, but I don't want to because it's just exhausting, and nobody believes me because I seem to be. And maybe that's back to your question. I think about the 731. Like
731.
that quad left, I can see any number of futures. I can tell you how they'd play out. I can tell you what steps it would take to get there. But I have no energy to write it down. And
Which I think is how the quad right is meant to be.
mhm, super interesting.
Because you're
So
seeing the big picture and you're seeing,
yeah,
the more like wider perspective of all of it versus the focused thing that's right in front of you that you're going to focus on this one next step.
I think that's why, like, I think I was saying to you earlier or someone else, like, I'm moving away from the words conditioning. I'm moving away from some of that language. But even like strategic, I don't think of myself as I'm capable of strategy, but the focus thing really resonates. I listened to a lecture that Rod did on the quad left, and that blew my mind. And it led to me doing like changes in my life, like wearing sunglasses around people because my eyes, and I've noticed a I've never met Barbara, but like are her eyes fairly piercing? And because quad left seem to have very piercing eyes, and it makes sense that whole shark thing. Like the shark eyes are very like when they're looking at you, they're coming in for the kill, or so it might be perceived. So I will wear sunglasses around people because my eyes are shooting all over the place because I'm thinking, and so it looks like I'm distracted. But also, I have absolutely found, and thank goodness I know this now. Employees used to lie to me all the time, but they weren't doing it to be malicious. They would start telling me some concern, like a risk on a project or a risk with the company or something. And as they're telling me, my eyes are because I'm like, okay, they just told me this. What about this? Like,
You're 3313 through and through, hearing all people's secrets.
yeah. So I'm hearing all this
forward.
stuff. My mind is now 2 years down the line. My face is going, like I'm literally having reactions to the possibilities. And they'll see that and interpret that what they're telling me in the moment is the problem. So they'll start changing their tune. So I never get the truth out of people because I'm actually like 2 years, like literally 2 years down the line as they're telling me stuff, forecasting, and my face is contorting to the possibilities of these possible scenarios so that they don't tell me the truth in the now, which is really fucked up. So I like will wear sunglasses, or I'll be like, I have to be really present and like not let on that I'm being like I'm feeling some sort of reaction or trigger to what they're telling me, because it could be something I could say like that. And I now know that like it led to hundreds of thousands of dollars of losses with business and stuff when I think back to these scenarios where it's like they were just trying to tell me, the backups might not be good for this client, and da, 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 da. And before you know it, I've like the whole world's on fire and it's an apocalypse and my face is, and then they start changing their information and their story, and now I don't have the truth and the thread is gone. And it's
Interesting.
massive.
I feel
So
like this conversation is just perfect for you with this defined G center, because it's almost like your 3313, if you go back to your chart, is like hearing people's secrets unconsciously. You're conscious of the listener. You're
Mhm.
listening. And then it's getting recycled back up through that 731 with all the projections into the future of what this is going to mean for the world and all the things, and then your reaction from it of the principles of how this is, impacts your personal principles, and you're a manifesting generator, so it's like all showing up. Like it's like you can't. I think it's crazy, the 3420, just how fast it's there. It's like you can't help. I watch it all the time with my son. It's like he's just so fast. You ask a question, and before you even get the question finished, the answer is no,
Mhm.
right? Or whatever it is. And so with your face, it's like you can't hide it because it's just showing up.
Um, yeah, you mentioned acoustic earlier too. You said you're very acoustic. For me, I'm highly acoustic, and for me, it's that 57, the right ear. I want to tell you something. I don't know if I've told you this before, but you left me a voice message once. Remind me if I've told you this. And I can't remember what you're talking about, so I'm not going to disclose anything that you were telling me at the time.
No, you're
You left
fine.
me a voice message, and the first time I heard it, I was either in my car or you were on speakerphone. And I heard what you said, and it might have been 60 seconds long. But I remember thinking, "Oh, she's upset about something." Not at me. It was like you had like cleared your throat or something, and there was some nuance. So I was like, "Whoa, that's I feel like I need to ask you about that." I listened to it later because it was like time to reply. I didn't have time. I had the phone up to my head, just to my left ear, and so I was like, "I forget what I know. I want to get back to Amanda. I'll listen to this thing," and I heard it, and I didn't hear the nuance that I knew I recognized. I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting." I put it back on speakerphone. Hear it again because the right ear is like, and you just cleared your throat or something, and I
Yeah.
really hear this nuance in people. And so I asked you some question about it, and I got kind of an emotional response from you. Like it was like I had picked up on something, but it was so.
I don't mind if you share anything.
Well, I don't even remember what it was. Like it was
Okay,
a
cool.
year ago. So, but I just remember it
Yeah,
was slightly personal, and it was I could hear it in your chest or your throat as you communicated it, but I did
fascinating.
not hear it only in the left ear. I had to. So I had like it wasn't just that I was already entertaining, but that was one of those concreting moments for me where I was like, I don't take phone calls unless I've got my both ears in or I'm on speakerphone. Like I do not. I'm right-handed, so I generally would free up my left hand and take calls like this. And now I also know in my life I have missed important details because I didn't know to ask the question because I didn't hear the little that whisper that comes from the spleen. That was a game changer, and it was quite literally your voice message at the time. And thankfully, I remembered that. Yeah, I know I'd listened to it with both ears the first time, and then the third time, and I could hear it. Left ear, nothing. Just like normal message.
So interesting.
Yeah,
Highly intuitive. Yeah. Wow. That's
but
amazing.
that's only come over time too, right? Like it's taken design to realize that, and mushrooms and various other things where it was like did I tell you about? I feel like I was told the story a lot, but like I used to think I had hearing problems. Played drums for 45 years.
Hmm.
I used to think I read people's lips. It wasn't. I was always listening for danger. And that 13 hears nothing but problems and that right ear. And so I in my metaphysical book, I was starting to explore that. And at the time, I was looking into like, do I really have hearing loss? Because I kept passing hearing tests, right? There'd be a certain range where it'd be kind of gone, but in general, I could hear a TV, especially in the older days, like CRT TVs. I would be able to hear a TV that was on mute in another room because it would make a high pitched shrill. Those because of those tubes. People were like, there's no TV on. I'm like, oh, there's a TV on in this house. I can tell you. And we go look, and sure enough, it was on. So I always had like certain ranges that others didn't seem to have.
Interesting.
And then I was convinced I was had hearing loss. I was starting to look into hearing aids. Like 3.5 years ago, I was looking into hearing aids, and now I have exceptional hearing. But it was through that metaphysical book of the right ear is listening for danger. My right ear is highly hears the danger. It turns out in my design. But there was one night that cemented for me on mushrooms. I'm in my bedroom, and I'm having like 3 grams, and I'm doing my whole thing. That was my thing, and I can hear my son and wife talking as though they're in the next room. They're not in the next
And
room.
they were 2 stories down. I remember this story. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
And one of the doors was a garage door into the garage office. So one of those solid core doors.
Yeah.
Like even if you're on the other side of it, you usually can't hear. I could hear their conversation. I was like, that is super powerful and weird. And it's those kind of moments that kind of wake you up to like, oh wow, this is a blueprint or a map for turning on powers. Like I don't know if you'd call that clairaudience or what, but I certainly can, in the right situations, like hear things that other people don't hear, and I don't have hearing problems at all. So,
Wow.
but
That's amazing.
I was afraid. I couldn't listen before, and I think that was the open heart. I know for sure that I was always listening. I was always listening for danger, not on purpose. Just was wired that way. Was hearing it all the time. Was trying to, put everyone else's needs ahead of my own because I wanted to be loved. That I wouldn't even hear the conversation because as soon as I knew the solution to the problem, because I did, I knew instantly what the problem was. I'm just waiting for my moment to say, hey, here's the gem for you. But it was never asked of me. So there's that 731, like they didn't hear it. And I would literally just sit there and wait for the person to finish telling their story for 10 minutes. And they would ultimately feel they weren't listened to because my answer was from the first 10 seconds. Because my head's just going, make sure you tell them this, make sure you tell them this. And I no longer heard anything the rest of the time.
Interesting.
So now
I wonder what 13 line 3 is. I haven't looked at, I don't know all the lines.
Pessimism, listening with pessimism.
Ah.
Which I now understand. And that was kill me too. Because every question came from this pessimistic viewpoint. Now I realize I need to flip that. It's curiosity. So I treat it way more playfully now before the pessimism really came through. And also because I had my own ideas of the future. It usually came in pretty dark and with satire as well. So
wow, crazy. So
yeah.
fascinating. So fun. I love our timing. I feel like this has been very splenic, all of it.
Yeah, I'm really glad to connect again. Did you say you're going to Santa Fe, right?
I am. We're going to meet in person.
Yeah, I think I'm still going. There's so many reasons to go. I haven't bought my plane ticket yet, but I've got a place to stay, and
Where are
well,
you?
I guess I've committed to doing a music bingo night or a HD bingo night. So I guess I have to go, but I have to buy my flights. So
Where are you staying?
I'm staying in one of the fellas' houses. You've
Dave.
probably seen the thread that yes.
Yeah.
So I got a room in his house. I think this is the house that Roger Campbell will be in. So there'll be a reflector nearby. So that should be
cool.
all in and of itself a whole experience.
An original.
Have you spent a lot of time around reflectors? Because those have been trippy.
Oddly, yes. I attract a lot of reflectors.
Okay.
Now, let me clarify that. I haven't spent, I have not had a reflector in my life close enough to spend 30 days with, right? So the experience of reflectors is definitely going to change throughout that time. But I've had a lot of tap-ins with these different reflectors, and I've made friends with, I love reflectors. I think in some ways, they're the only ones that can fully see projectors, because another projector vibes with another projector, but they still have their own influence on you. And not that a reflector doesn't have influence, but there's a way that I've had reflectors reflect things to me that I'm like, wow, how did you pick up on that in that one conversation? It was wild. So, and it's happened multiple times. So yeah, that's my experience with the reflectors.
I had one friend that I informed her she was a reflector, like she didn't know her design at all. And then we met like a week later on a Zoom call, and it was scheduled for 45 minutes. And we talked for 8.5 hours. Like the time vanished. Like we were both like, what just happened? We entered because you're like just sort of mirroring each other, and it was intense. So
wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
Super wild.
Cool. How are you doing for time? I personally have to go here in about 10 minutes. Was there anything else specifically you want to talk about? I mean, we've been all over the place. I know there's a couple of things I was picking up on here. The 33 is interesting to me because I have it, but of course I have the 13. So I wonder if you feel compromised by that, and or the question I would ask is, do you feel that pull of that 13, like where you're sharing more than you might have with someone else? Is it like a tractor beam a bit?
So the same brother that has 731 also has 13. So and he's 18 months older than me, which means I've been, you know, impacted by that 13 for a long time. And I have also done ceremonies on the 33. And it's also unconscious, right? So there's a side of it, the unconscious, that's hard to tap into. And yet I feel like I have tapped a little bit. Your unconscious sun, I think, is a little easier to tap into than some of the lower planets, like the one, for example, with the Pluto or whatever. But I feel like the 33 is interesting to me because in many ways, you'd think the gate of retreat and this retreat to turn a weak position into a strength, a lone gate, wants to hide, wants to, be in its own thing, and yet 33 is Leo.
Mm.
So it wants to be seen, it wants to be heard, it wants to and it's like whenever it's feeling weak, it retreats. Because Leos have that insecurity inside, which I think is kind of interesting. So that's my experience with the 33, and I do find that I do like coming around the 13 of my brother. I certainly talk a lot more than my brother, even though he has, 731 and whatnot too. But amplifying people's throats, the whole "are you trying to attract attention" has been a transformational question.
So you said that you've explored 33 in ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be curious for you to expand on that, but as well, like that 33 is in an open throat, right?
Yes.
So, you don't strike me as someone that's trying to attract attention with your voice. You usually come across as very tidy and clean. Like there's no, I mean, it's the right words at the right time. And maybe it's because you put time into it, whereas I just am verbal diarrhea. Just so it comes and it's already done. But yeah.
Well, I appreciate that reflection. I really, really do, because in some ways I feel like "are you trying to attract attention" was also one of those things that kind of began to tear apart my YouTube channel. In some ways, it's like, okay, am I trying to attract attention? Like, why am I creating YouTube videos if I'm not trying to attract attention? It's kind of almost like that undefined G question of like, am I looking for direction? How do I get through life without getting direction? Right? Like, how do you market a business without trying to attract attention? And I've had to go through a major deconditioning process in terms of nice. Thanks, Isaac. In terms of navigating marketing myself from a lens of not trying to attract attention and not trying to prove myself, right? And not looking for direction when everything is about be niche, be certain about your direction, right? That open ajna, all the things. It's like so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So coming back to the 33 and ceremony, my intention for the weekend was to remember. So remember, being a core part of the 33 energy, especially when you're looking at it from the gene key perspective. And it immediately took me to the 47. I was like, I'm here for the 33. I'm not here for the 47. And I was like, I want to remember. Help me remember. Help me remember lessons I've been taught in past ceremonies. Help me remember things that I happened in childhood that I should be recalling, all of these things, right? That was my intention in some ways. I don't need more, just help me remember who I am, why I'm here, what my purpose is. And it took me to 47, and it was like, you're not here to understand the past. Because those are a connected stream, and 47 is my Venus, which is Virgo. And according to Barbara, I recently did an astrology reading with her, and she said that Venus is like the ruler of my chart. It's like a big energy that is the hardest part of my entire chart, which I think is interesting. That then going back to that ceremony with 47, I have a daily reminder go off on my phone that says, you don't need to understand the past. You don't need to make sense of the past.
Hmm.
And yet there is this side of me that loves to remember. And the other thing that I got from that weekend, and I mean, obviously many things, but was if you want to remember, write it down.
Yeah,
And
it's come up a lot for me too. Journaling. Everything is like you should journal, and I'm like so resistant to it. But last night I actually pulled a notebook out and wrote a couple things down, and then was able to sleep because I was able to like it was like, oh, I could put that down. That was like
yeah,
it's taken 2.5 years, and it was last night I actually started applying some journaling. So.
but journal to remember to write it down is one form, but also record it is another, like to document. Like I see this as my documentary side. Like I want to document my story. I want to, that kind of energy.
Mhm.
Um, so it can be video. You have such a fast moving energy that I imagine it would be hard to sit down and journal, especially by hand. Sit down and journal on the computer might be a little easier.
Yeah,
or with
yeah,
yeah,
or with images.
or just transcript voice memo. I voice memo all the time. Like
Mhm.
I did for a long time when I used to drive a lot. I feel like now I don't leave the house, so I don't really voice memo as much as I used to, but
And do you ever listen back, or you're just doing it to hear yourself saying it so that you
that's
can
the thing
reflect?
that's really interesting about it, and I think that the value of having it attached to the 47 for me, I mean, it's also attached to the 56, right? Like, that's the whole stream, and I have half of all of those. And whenever I get my throat activated, side note, that 33 gets activated big time, like the retreat to turn a weak position into a strength is a prime example of why I've disappeared off YouTube.
Mm.
Um, the question, what was the question? It was
Well, we're talking about 33 in ceremony, trying and remembering, and then
remember the
uh,
47. Oh,
you're not here to remember.
something about documenting. This is hilarious. Here we are talking about remembering. um, yeah, I think it was something about documenting, writing things down. Oh my gosh, I totally lost it. That's so funny.
No, but it's like we're as I say,
Oh, looking back at voice memos or re-listening.
right.
That's what. Okay. So going back and re-listening to voice memos, I have occasionally done that, and also but not as much as I should. So my brother has 13, right? He writes a journal. He's very good at keeping a journal, and he does like almost like the artist way approach to getting your thoughts out every day, like your morning pages, they call it, where you just write 3 pages, whatever it is, stream of consciousness. And he has a system where every single year at the end of the year, he actually re-listens or he rereads it. And I think I could benefit more from rereading. Like the other day, I actually took all of my notes from all of my ceremonies and put them on a Google Doc and printed them. So I have them like sitting at the printer and I want to reread them. And yet, it's why are you reading them? You're not reading them to try to understand.
So interesting. And even as I'm there, I'm like, I could never do that. I can't even go back and watch or do like I can't. But in my head, I'm like, yeah, great. Print them all out, upload them into ChatGPT, and ask it to summarize it for me. Like basically, tell me the themes. You know, tell me, give me some action items out of the stuff I just put in there. Do the homework for me.
Oh my gosh, I totally understand that. Totally understand that. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
interesting.
Um,
Revelation is the city of this gene keys. It's forgetting, mindfulness, and revelation. So who knows?
there was something I know because I was looking at your chart earlier. Your distraction is power. My view is power. Oh, you got the guilt trauma. I got a home full of that, so I know all about that. Innocent, yeah. So innocence, motivation, and your
That's
training
very
is
real.
desire. So that's where we're definitely opposite. My motivation is desire, and even all this week, quite literally, like YouTube is pummeling me with, the AI has recognized that it needs to remind me about desire, and that desire, it's a monster actually. Like I can
Like your
date.
ads are so targeted kind of thing? Or
No,
what?
just the video suggestions.
Mm.
it's my I get messages from spirit through my YouTube channel. Like I just basically pull down from the top, and it's like, oh yeah, that's right where I'm at. But
What's your YouTube feed look like?
it's all over the place.
Like, is it spiritual content or is it like
Yeah, I definitely,
I pull it down, Apple, Apple event, whatever. There's spirit. Gotta get the new iPhone.
and I mean, maybe that is kind of spirit, right? Like
Right.
like it really is kind of, it's, yes, to all of that.
That's
Um,
so funny. I could
mhm.
see that. Yeah.
What I also realized, and I think it's that quad left the focus thing. I used to get so stressed about like watching something and then being like, I need to finish watching this. So I'd like leave myself a note and like, where am I going to put a note to remember to watch the end of this? And then someone said something to me like a year ago. It was like, you don't have to watch it. Just like watch it until you're like, now I'm tapping out. And so I just like, there's so many videos and books and things that are just like started 5%, 25%. And I'm just like, good enough for now. Don't know if I'm ever going to go back to it. Leaves a lot of unfinished messaging that I'm receiving, but I also used to feel such guilt about not finishing that I didn't learn anything. So now I'm just letting myself, that's that squirrel focus to me. That's the quad left, just
That's the manifesting generator.
as well. Yeah.
I think I created that video last week. I haven't released it yet, but the manifesting generator video, like explaining the manifesting generator. So I've been like deep diving in and I loved your thoughts and everything. The one thing that I said, like, is if you have a wake of courses in your past, don't worry about it because you're here to respond to certain things. And when the energy is no longer there to respond to, you're on to the next thing. And that's a healthy way for you to operate because you're going to ping pong and find what you need to respond to. Now, of course, you want like the whole Buddha warrior concept that you sent me, or warrior Buddha. Like, you want to ensure that you're not ping ponging from the place of like giving all your power away constantly,
Mm-hmm.
but
Totally.
holding it in and responding, like truly responding. I think, like, yeah, energy's gone for that thing. Moving on to the next.
Yeah, I'm actually listening to Chetan Parkin's Human Design book as an audiobook. And yesterday I was on the types chapter, and he was talking about manifesting generators. And between him and Eleanor, it's pretty clear that this is a big time when raw broke from a lot of people, was around type. He said there's 4 types. The world that I'm in, it's 5 types. It's not a subtype. And some of that guidance has helped me a ton, because the way at least Chaitan described it was, I might get a sacral response to something, but I then just still need to dip my toe in, because like by the time I go say yes to this thing, I might be like, maybe not. And that has been an eye opener, because otherwise I'm initiating in a way everywhere, and it's I can have 1,000 sacral responses in a day, and it's exhausting. So it really is like, still, sit with it a bit. I have to sit with it, which for me is agonizing. And I'm also just
So
afraid.
why is it a different type? I'm curious from your perspective because I definitely fall on the 4 types side of it, but go for it. I want to hear this.
Yeah, I mean, it's partly the conversations with Chaitan, with Eleanor, and it definitely seems to be when a lot of folks were breaking from raw. There was, and what Eleanor has said a few times on podcasts, like it's not like she's a secret, it's a secret book, but she's like, Ra said, he agreed with her that there was 5 types, but he had communicated there was 4, and his ego wouldn't allow him to go back on what he said. He's like, we're already going down this path. It's too late. You teach 5, I'm teaching 4. And it's around the time that Chaitan and Eleanor and others kind of went, well, and there was all sorts of stuff going on around money and bills not being paid. Like, it was very just, it's funny. She said, one thing she said that really stood out for me is, she said, when she was there with these people for the weeks that she was there, she was the only person wearing like a suit. Like, everyone else was in jeans and t-shirts, right? It was the hippies, and then this, person that's, uh, a doctor and like therapist and all these things, right? And there was a real lack of business awareness at that time, and that's really what's kind of messed things up a bit is it became the business of human design. And we were talking about IHDS a bit earlier, and like even IHDS and they're all going through the cross of planning. They're trying to do this thing, and the energy for that's failing for them too, right? You can see it.
Totally, 1000%.
So yeah, I don't know if I'm answering your question other than that. I'm not a generator. I am absolutely not a generator. I have a sacral response for sure, but it's for small decision making until I'm spiritually aligned with what it is. I've been playing with muscle testing, lean testing, pendulums, all sorts of stuff because I'm desperately trying to understand what answers I'm getting for myself. And plant medicine doesn't
I
help
still
it
don't
quite often.
understand what your strategy is then. So do you follow the inform and respond and inform kind of thing? Like, or how
Yeah,
do
it's
you?
not because it's not really incorporating the generator and the manifester strategy is at least what Chaitan was getting at. It's different. That's why it's a fifth type. It's not just like, oh, you're a
Okay.
generator that needs to inform. It's like you're going to get that sacral hit, but by the time it's time to do it, you may not have the energy. And me with that open heart, completely open, I've and this is what I say to anyone with an open heart is like, don't use the words "I will." Don't say "I promise." Don't say "I guarantee." So like that was part of my no but yes if experience was, yeah, I'd love to, you know, come on Saturday. I plan on being there. Leave myself even a hair of wiggle room just
I'm the
because,
same way.
yeah, it's
Hmm.
crucial. Because otherwise, if you let someone down, you're
Yeah.
letting yourself down, right? That's what I realized is it's not letting them down. It's like that's part of it, but it's I've let myself down. I've let my guard down. I've let my authority slip. Um, so yeah, it's something along those lines. I'm still like I'm exploring that actively right now. It's a hot mess of merging information, but I'm you know there's
I've
a lot of
gone
things
deeply on that one. Like that's been a big one for me.
that.
Like
Mhm.
I feel like, and then we should probably start wrapping. But um, I have given myself permission, and this is how I had to word it in a way to be able to overcome it was, but to give myself permission to be flaky,
Mhm.
you know, and to like let go, like basically be okay with other people seeing me as that way because I needed to follow the moment,
Yeah.
And I think that I've learned how to navigate that better, but like, you know, so it doesn't really, and also it kind of like gets the wrong people out of your life. Like if you're 5 minutes late to something because you're being splenic or whatever, but you arrived, like no big deal. But if you're gonna throw a whole fit over it, you're not my person. You know what I mean? Like, or whatever it is. Like, hey, I can't make it this day. I know I promised I could. I'm so sorry. Like, hey, it all works out in the wash. You end up with people like that
Mhm.
versus people that make you wrong for it. So this is an amazing conversation. I appreciate the invitation.
Oh yeah. Hey, we can continue it again sometime. I get a lot of this. Yeah.
Long conversation.
They're
Maybe
always.
you should give this to me and I should cut it down to be the undefined versus defined G center video, but the shortened version. That'd be kind of fun.
I'm
Aaron.
happy to. I don't know how much we actually talked about that because I was ping ponging us
I
all over the
actually
place.
I think we had some good stuff in here that
Cool.
could be really cool. So
Right
yeah,
on.
that'd be fun.
All right. Well, I got to go to my Tai Chi
Yeah,
Gung,
I gotta get out of here too.
and so I'm going to play this little outro video to make it look all pro, as though I've actually spent a bunch of time on this. And I'll say goodbye. We'll talk again soon. Hang on for a second. Okay, I'll catch you at the end here.